Your bed smells like old rain, straw, wet linen, the ghost of boiled herbs. You shift slightly. Something cracks underneath a beetle, maybe, or just the truth. You haven't eaten since yesterday, or the day before. You keep the bread to look at. It reminds you of the shape of hands. You're blank, it is thinner now. Not from time someone cut a strip from it. You don't remember doing it, but you don't remember much anymore. Just cold, and how it curls around your lungs like a wet rope. The mattress wheezes when you sit up. That sound again. It's the closest thing to a voice you've heard in days. You're not sick, or you were, or you're waiting to be. The wind has learned the shape of the walls. It touches you gently, like a mother checking for fever, but colder, more tired. Your knees ache when you walk. You say you'll stretch. You don't. You only open the shutter to see if Venice is still across the lagoon. It is, but it doesn't look back. And then you see it, the candle, still burning. Someone lit it. Not you, not today. But the wax is warm and the flame is fresh. The others left. The boat was loud. You remember the splash. You stood at the edge of the garden and waved to no one. They said someone would come back, but promises don't float. You thought you were alone now. But the candle disagrees. You try not to think about the doctor, the one with the mask, the notes, the smell of vinegar and cloves. You try not to think about the tools still on his table. But the flame flickers like a breath, yours or his. What if history forgot he stayed? What if you were the only one who remembered? Tell us softly. Where are you listening from? Or what time does your night begin? And if this story held your breath for a moment, share it, subscribe, or light a candle in the comments. The story begins. The sea makes no sound this morning. That, more than anything, wakes you. Not the ache in your back. Not the cough trying to form in your throat. Not even the tight pinch behind your eyes from sleeping too shallow, too long, but the absence of the water's voice. The lagoon is supposed to whisper, even at night, even in death. It always mumbled under the dock, tapped against the stone, rattled driftwood like a lullaby for the forgotten. But today, nothing. You blink slowly, vision adjusting to the washed-out yellow of candlelight. The flame is still alive. It shouldn't be. You hadn't lit it last night. You hadn't touched anything. The shutter creaks open with your hand. The air outside is bruised, not quite dawn, not quite dusk. Venice still crouches in the distance like a faded memory. You stare at it through salt, stung lashes. The sky smells like iron. The candle has not moved, but someone lit it. There is no one left to do so. At least, not officially. You step away from the window. Your legs complain like old hinges. The ache in your hip has a personality now dry, sarcastic, unbending. You imagine it once had a name. Your sandals squeak when you walk. So much for dignity. The long corridor stretches ahead, a spine of stone. The old ward lies at the far end, past the lime. Washed doors and the rusted hooks once used for coats, or maybe bodies. You told yourself you'd never go back down there. Not again, but the candle says otherwise, and the mask is still on the table. It hasn't moved since he left, or since you think he did. The doctor wore it everywhere. A long, beaked thing that turned his face into a riddle. Glass lenses for eyes, a nose made for fear. Inside, dried herbs and spices to fight the miasma. They never worked. The smell was terrible, but people trusted it because they needed to trust something. You didn't speak to him much. No one did. He boiled his tools at dawn, made his notes in Latin. Some days you saw him cry behind the beak, or maybe just sweat. The glass fogged either way. Then one morning silence. His gloves still sat by the sink, the ledger open, the tools cleaned and arranged, but the man gone. You wanted to believe he got on the barge. You needed to, but the mask is still here. So is his breath, you think, still tangled in the wool coat hanging by the stairs. You follow the corridor downward. Each step is colder. The torches on the wall are burnt to waxy nubs. You don't light them. Your candle is enough at the bottom. You reach the room you've avoided since the third week. The old examination chamber. The air inside smells like cloves, and something faintly metallic, like pennies or dried blood. The table is set again, a basin, 2 folded cloths, a boiled spoon, and the ledger. Open, but not on his handwriting, on yours. The ink is smudged from your fingertip. You must have written it, the shape of the letters is familiar, but the words aren't. Patient continues to show signs of withdrawal. Reaction subdued, unaware of candle stimulus. Subject believes doctor has left. Ledger remains open for observation. Mirror removed. You flinch. Mirror. There was one. Wasn't there. Above the basin. Tinted glass. You avoided it. No one liked seeing their own face here. Not after the third week. You glance up. Nothing. Just empty hooks. You look down again. There's a mark on your wrist. You trace it absently. A bruise, a cuff ring, or an old memory returning. You step back. The basin is steaming. Fresh water. You didn't draw it. You haven't touched the cistern in days. Someone has been here. Someone still is. You leave the room slowly, the candle shaking in your grip. The hallway feels tighter now, like the walls are leaning in. Listening, remembering. At the end of the hall, you stop by the old herb storage. It was sealed a month ago. Now the door is cracked open. Inside, bundles of time, molded jars. Dust, dust, dust. And on the table, a second candle, lit. You stand there for a long time. 2 flames now. Neither yours. You turn back toward the staircase. But this time you walk without your sandals. Bare feet, quiet steps. You don't want to wake whoever else is here, or worse. Whoever never left. You're blank. It is still folded when you return. But differently. Neater, tucked. The shape of a handprint still rests in the pillow. Not yours. Larger, gloved. You lie down slowly. The candle at the sill burns steady. There's a second beside it now. You don't remember bringing it. You close your eyes. The silence presses in again. But this time, not empty. Somewhere beneath, a floorboard creaks. Soft, measured, intentional. You don't move. You don't breathe. You wait, and the candle just keeps burning. You wake up to the sound of your own breathing. It comes soft at first, then louder, echoing in the beaked mask. Leather straps still tight across your skull. Eyes dry behind the thick glass lenses. And somewhere close by, something is dripping. The candle is still burning. It shouldn't be. You lit it 3 nights ago, or was it 4? The wax was meant to last one. A stub of tallow, no longer than a thumb. But it flickers on, steady as a heartbeat, as if it too refuses to leave. The wind rattles the shutters, plague wind, the kind that carries breath from the dying. But here, inside the stone room, it smells only of rosemary and rot. You don't move, not yet. Your legs remember the walk too well. Stairs cut from coral stone, hallways lined with crumbling lime plaster, the weight of a body over your back, the girl who couldn't cry. Her blood had dried into her gums. You carried her anyway. You told yourself she was still warm. Outside, the lagoon presses its stillness against the walls. This is San Servolo, or maybe Povglia. It doesn't matter. They all end the same way. Small, forgotten islands where the sick were sent and not retrieved. Floating prisons for the contagious, the inconvenient, the invisible. Officially, they called them quarantine stations. Unofficially, they were where hope came to disappear. You remember the arrival, a bell, then the splash of oars, then the door bolted from the outside. You weren't sick, not yet. You were the doctor, or at least you wore the uniform. The beaked mask still rests beside you. Stuffed with herbs, lavender, mint, crushed wormwood. You remember the list, not because it works, but because it was what people believed would keep you alive. That's the myth. That plague doctors knew what they were doing. The truth, you were a glorified note taker, a body counter, a mask behind which you could weep without being seen. You tried to help, that was real. You boiled your tools in wine, burned linens, painted chalk marks over doorways. Asterisk asterisk Dio abbi pieta. Asterisk asterisk God, have mercy. But the mercy never came, not for them, not for you. You finally rise. Your joints crack like old floorboards. A bowl of water sits by the wall. Gray with dust. You splash your face anyway. Salt and copper. Your hands are maps. They remember the dirt on the wooden desk, tools laid in a perfect line, the scalpel, the shears, the measuring rope, a ledger with curled parchment, still open. You didn't finish the last name. The ink faded into a trembling line. You tried to remember who it was. A sailor, a nun, someone who coughed politely even as their lungs collapsed. You almost ask aloud, but there is no one to answer. The silence in this place isn't empty. It's heavy, it remembers. You see the outline of past bodies on the floor, where the lime never quite scrubbed the stains. One cot still has the imprint of knees pressed together, as if the girl died praying. Maybe she was. You told her she wasn't alone, and then you left her because there were 20 more waiting. The myth says the plague doctor always fled, took gold, vanished, left his mask behind. But that wasn't you. You stayed. Too long, maybe, because now you don't remember how to leave. You step outside. The air is thick with brine. Mist curls around the stones. The boat that brought you is still moored, its rope frayed by salt and time. But no one comes, not anymore. You walk the same loop as always. Garden, chapel, ward. Nothing grows in the garden. The chapel door stays ajar. Candles melted down to black puddles. One saint's statue toppled long ago, face buried in weeds. You whisper a prayer anyway, not for yourself. You don't believe you're still alive. Inside the ward, the beds are gone. Only straw shadows remain. You sit in the corner where the sun used to reach at dawn. Even the light forgot how to enter. You pull out the last letter you wrote. Never sent. I'm still here. I think the others are gone. The candle doesn't go out. Maybe that means something. Or maybe I'm just too tired to die. You read it aloud just once. Then burn it. The candle flickers. You wait, and that's when you hear it. A knock, no louder than a heartbeat, from the far wall, the one with no door. You blink. You wait. Nothing but that. Wasn't even the strangest part. If you're still listening, you're not alone. Subscribe for the next quiet mystery. Like this if the candle still flickers in you. And share it with someone who believes the doctor never left. Until next time. Sleep slow. You wake slowly. The air smells like cloth left too long in rain, sour linen, salt, stiff, and something older beneath. The room is darker now. The candle hasn't gone out, but the flame has lowered itself, crouched low as if afraid to be seen. And still, no sound, no footsteps, no waves, only the hush of quarantine. You sit up on the narrow wooden bed and press your hand to the wall again. Cool stone, chipped in places. One scratch feels deliberate, as if someone had been counting. But it's no number you can follow, just marks, slashes like someone trying to prove they still existed. You stand, the floor doesn't creak. The wood is swollen from centuries of breathless damp. You walk barefoot quietly toward the other door. Not the one with the plank nailed across it, the other. The one without a keyhole, just wood, old hinges, no way in, no way out. A door that might never have opened at all. It wasn't supposed to be like this, you think. You came here to clean, to catalog the remaining items in the plague doctor's quarters, to assist the archivists. They'd said there would be someone to meet you at the dock, but the boat dropped you off and left. And when you reached the building, this rotting villa they once called a lazaretto, the door closed behind you, by itself. It hasn't opened since. The food they left in the crate was dry, salted. The water tin is half full. You're not scared exactly, but you are. Paused, as if you've been placed here to wait. For what? You still don't know. You kneel at the second door, the one with no keyhole. Your fingers trace the seam in the wood. It's too smooth, worn down not from opening but from touch. From people like you, over time, trying to understand it. And below your hand, a symbol, carved faintly into the grain. A circle not closed, interrupted at the base by a small cross. You've seen it before, on the tools left in the apothecary case, on the inside of the mask's beak, on a wax seal half, melted near the floor, and once on a spine. Yes, in the storage room there was a skeleton propped in the corner like a forgotten puppet. No coffin, no wrappings, just brittle bones beneath a shredded robe. The spine had been branded with the same half-circle mark, as if someone wanted him remembered or erased. You look again at the door. Behind it, maybe there's just an old storage hallway, or a collapsed stairwell, or as one of the older records claimed, an inner sick room, a room where the last plague doctor was kept, not after he died. But while he was still breathing, you blink. There's something soft caught in the candlelight. A feather. It wasn't there before, white, small, caught in a splinter on the table's edge, the kind used in ink, dipping pens, or once, perhaps, plucked from the tail of a dying bird for superstition. You touch it gently. It's warm, still. The island is called Povglia. You knew the name before you came here, but it means more now. You can feel it in your spine, that stiff arch where old names settle, where people forget how to grieve the dead, so they rename them instead. In the 1006, this was a stopgap, a waiting room for the dying. Ships were not allowed to Venice if sickness was suspected, so the passengers stayed here. Isolated, examined, confessed, then disappeared. It wasn't murder. It wasn't cruelty. It was policy. Quarantine, they called it. A word that sounds so clean, but meant 40 days of silence, 40 days of wondering whether anyone would return. And sometimes they didn't. You find a journal beneath a loose floor tile, not leather, bound just stitched canvas. The ink has run in places. Pages are thin as skin. The handwriting isn't the doctor's. Too rushed, not trained. I heard him last night. I thought I'd imagined it. They told us he was dead, but someone still walks the hallway when the moon is high. I don't think he knows he's walking. He doesn't cough anymore. He doesn't eat. But the mask is still on. You close the book. You don't want to read more yet, not tonight. You turn back to the tools on the shelf, the iron forceps, the brass syringe, the beaked mask too heavy to lift without two hands. Each tool is clean, dustless. You noticed that yesterday, in a room thick with cobwebs. How could these be untouched? You check the case again. The drawer you hadn't opened, the tiny one at the bottom, isn't locked anymore. Inside, a strip of fabric. Black, embroidered faintly with that same open circle mark. It's not a scarf, it's not a sash, it's a blindfold, still damp, still warm. You light the second candle, just to see what happens. Its flame rises faster than the first. Sharper, a crack of light against the cold, and then you hear it, From behind the door with no keyhole, one sound, not a knock, not a whisper, but a breath, and then nothing. You stay seated on the stone floor, the journal still resting near your knee, the blindfold beside you like a question no one will answer. You breathe, slow, careful. The first candle flickers once, then stills, and behind the door, no movement, no echo, just the memory of a sound you weren't supposed to hear. You wonder, was the plague doctor locked in, or did he lock himself there? And if the tools remained, why did he take the blindfold off? But that wasn't even the worst part. The wind rustles, not outside, inside. It curls through the broken shutters, sighing across the stone floor, lifting a scrap of yellowed paper from the ground. It doesn't blow it far, only an inch or two, but enough to reveal what's beneath it, another page. Written in the same jagged hand, the same red ink that is not ink. You crouch, and though you know the scent by now, old iron, dried sorrow, parchment baked too long in sunlight, you still hesitate before lifting it. Not because of fear, because it feels like intrusion. You are not alone in this room. No one breathes, no one stirs, but every corner feels occupied by something unfinished, the kind of silence that holds its breath, waiting for someone else to speak first. You lift the second page. Its top corner crumbles into dust. Entry Romans 17, they will not let me leave, though the fever is gone from my own blood. They say I must finish my notes, but I have. They are not interested in cure, only record. My mask frightens the new ones. I wear no mask now, just cloth. The nosebleeds have started, so. He took it off, and no one ever talks about that part in the stories, do they? The mask, the beak, the image stamped into nightmares and novelty costumes. Everyone remembers the mask, but not the man who had to choose whether to keep it on or try to be human again. Myth vs. reality. Plague doctors were not sorcerers or madmen. They were civil servants, often unpaid, often untrained. Some were barbers, grocers, even butchers. Others were educated physicians, but too old or too untrusted to be placed in the city. So they were exiled to places like this, islands where silence took on weight, where the healthy left, and the sick remained, and when a doctor's contract ended, he didn't always get to go home. Some never got the paperwork. Others didn't dare sail back with hands still stained. You fold the page carefully. There's a low sound behind you, wood creaking, not sharp enough to be threat, but not nothing either. You turn your head, and there it is, the hook, still screwed into the wall above the fireplace. A rusted iron curve, fixed in place, even though the beam it's in is cracked and warping. And you know what it held, the mask. Maybe it hung there for years after he left. Maybe no one dared take it down. Maybe someone did. One of the board guards, the drunk ones on night patrol. And then put it back in a hurry when it whispered, "You don't believe in ghosts, but you do believe in memory that stains the walls." You step toward it, slowly, as though your boots might disturb something older than dust. And you notice, just beside the fireplace, a small pile of objects. Not stacked, scattered like they fell during some small collapse. Among them, a broken eyeglass lends a scrap of velvet, dyed once. Blue a spoon with a hole bored clean through, and there, what looks like a child's drawing tacked into the stone with a bone sliver. You kneel, the drawing is rough, stick limbs, too many fingers, but there are 3 figures, one tall, 2 small, and a long, beaked face in the middle. You sit back on your heels. No one ever said he had children. No records list a wife, no payment listed next of kin, but in one letter, sealed by mistake into a Venetian ledger, he writes, "I wonder if they kept the ribbon I left on her cradle." That's the part history skips. The soft details, the why behind the mask, not fear of the plague, not always, but fear of being forgotten, of leaving no mark, of dying behind layers of cloth with no one to remember your name, and on this island. That fear lingers because hundreds came here, dozens wore the mask, only a few ever left, and most were erased. You rise, the last candle flickers again. You thought it would have gone out by now, but it still burns. Not bright, but stubborn, like someone left it for you, and suddenly you remember something odd from part 1, a sound, soft patterned, like pages turning, but no books were open then. Nothing should have made that sound. Unless, no, not yet, you step away from the fireplace and look back at the cot. There, half tucked into the mattress seams, is a 3rd page. Not just red ink this time. There's something, drawn. You reach for it. It's nearly morning, but not the kind of morning anyone waits for. The wind hasn't changed direction, the boat hasn't come, and the candle is still burning. You sit on the stone bench outside the plague chapel, arms around your knees, trying not to breathe too deeply. There's a scent of something faintly sweet in the air. Not perfume, not flowers, rot, faint but constant, like it belongs here, like it always has. You stare at the lantern above the chapel door. It's tilted, just slightly, like it's been watching the island longer than you've been alive. And inside the chapel, the shadow of the beaked mask still leans over the altar. Still hunched, still unmoving. He hasn't left, not even once, not even for a second. They used to say plague doctors fled first. It's mostly true. They were often hired from other cities' desperate men or greedy ones. They'd sign contracts to care for the infected, wear the costume and hope the mask would protect them. But if things got bad, if the dead outnumbered the sick, if the winds turned and the fever spread too fast, they disappeared, but this one didn't. The chapel's roof is tiled with old lead and broken prayers. You step inside again, quieter this time. The stone beneath your feet is cold. Candlelight warms the center of the room not much, just enough to make the corners darker by comparison. He's still there, slouched at the prayer table, beak facing forward. Leather gloves folded in his lap. You've never heard him breathe, never heard him move, but sometimes you think the mask tilts slightly when you speak aloud, like he's listening. Yesterday you asked him his name. He didn't answer, but a bird tapped once against the window, just once, and then flew away. There are rumors the plague doctor here was different, that he refused to be paid, that he volunteered, that he never once removed the mask, not even to eat. No one ever saw him sleeping. He took no assistance, no help, no breaks. He kept records, though. That much is real. In the back of the chapel is a cabinet of ledgers. You flipped through one. Dates, names, a line for symptoms, a line for outcome. You stopped reading after 3 pages. Too many outcomes were the same. On the island, time folds in odd ways. Day is indistinguishable from evening. You sleep in short, strange bursts. You dream of ink stains and fire, and always the mask, always there, just behind the dream's door. Sometimes you wake with the smell of vinegar in your throat. Sometimes you forget where you are. The myth says plague doctors stuffed their masks with herbs to protect from disease: rosemary, lavender, clove, mint. It wasn't just superstition. They truly believed bad smells carried illness. Blocking them was protection, but what's not often told is how heavy that mask was, how hot, how the leather bit into the skin after hours, how the eye lenses fogged with each breath, how the herbs went stale in a week. And they kept wearing them anyway. This island was once a monastery, then a quarantine station, then a mass grave. Now it's just a name whispered across the lagoon. No one sails here unless paid well. Even then, they come at dawn and they leave before noon. You've been here 5 nights. You haven't seen another soul, except him. You try talking again. I know you're not real. You whisper, sitting by the chapel door, arms wrapped tight around yourself. Or maybe you are. I don't care. The candle flickers. Nothing moves. I'm tired of being afraid of you. Still nothing. Just wind, and somewhere far off a splash. You press your palm against the stone floor. It's damp. A small trickle of moisture from the wall is forming a puddle. You remember now the monks used to collect rainwater here. Even death needs plumbing. A few tools lie by his feet, a hooked lancet, a brass syringe, a wooden tongue depressor warped from time. You wonder if he ever used them, or if they were only props, a theater of healing. You pick one up, the syringe. It's heavier than expected. Inside, something rattles dried liquid. A bug. You drop it. It lands quietly, but the doctor's head shifts. Slightly. Barely. You freeze. He doesn't move again. That night, you eat hard bread and dried plums. Your stomach aches. You write a small letter in charcoal on the chapel wall. Still here. You wonder if anyone before you did the same. You dream of feathers, of a bird with no eyes that sings in Latin. You don't speak Latin, but somehow you understand it says, keep watching, keep watching. By morning, the candle is lower, but not gone. You sit near it, breathing slow. trying to forget the shapes your eyes keep making in the corners of the room. You stare at his boots. They are cracked, but not dusty. You think that means he moved, or someone wiped them clean. You don't remember doing either. You try one more time. Not a question, a confession. My sister died on the third day. I think I made her stay in the house too long. I thought if we just waited, the fever would pass. No reply, but you feel something like permission settle in your chest. You don't cry, not quite, but something lets go inside your throat. Outside, a raven sits on the broken window ledge. It watches you, then flies away again toward the sea. You lie down on the chapel bench. One arm beneath your head. The candle flickers again. You close your eyes. You whisper, "Just one more night." It starts with a scratching sound, not a rat, not this time. This one is slower, more careful, a kind of deliberate drag across the wood of the infirmary walls, as if someone were trying to carve a thought they couldn't speak. You open your eyes and stare at the ceiling, the candles low, the shadows stretch too long. You sit up, aching. The cot groans beneath you like an old man muttering a warning. The scratching stops. Nothing but silence now. Except the sea and your own breath, and that strange weight in your ribs that never quite leaves. You rise slowly, bones protesting like rusted hinges. The infirmary hasn't changed, which is to say, it's still the same soft ruin. The linen on the next cot is still crumpled from someone who hasn't been there in days. The basin still smells faintly of vinegar and old time. The window is shut, so scratched, you move toward the back wall. And there it is, something carved faintly in the grain of the wood. One word, crooked, deep, fresh, stay. You don't know if it's a warning or a command, but either way you already have. The days do not pass here. They settle like the dust. There is no calendar, no bell, no priest left to toll the hour. Only habits. Boil the water, check the jars, light the candle. Every evening, as the sun rolls its dying orange behind the lagoon, you light a single taper and set it by the surgical tray. It's not for sight. It's not for comfort. You tell yourself it's to honor the dead, but part of you still wonders if you didn't light it. Would someone else? You step outside only when you must. The air has turned. The plague doesn't cloud the breath like before, but there's a new kind of sickness now. Loneliness is patient. It grows without fever, without boils, without symptoms you can track. You only feel it when it's too late, when you begin talking to chairs or wondering if your hands still belong to you. You keep your mask slung at your hip, the beaked one, the one with dried herbs packed into the snout. Wormwood, roses, mint, juniper berries, not because they help, but because it makes the smell of rot easier to bear, and because myth has its uses. You remember what they said. Plague doctors didn't stay behind. They were paid well. Distant, cowards, some whispered. Masked men who never touched the dying. But they were wrong, weren't they? You remember Sister Alessa, a woman who touched every brow herself. You remember Pietro, who stitched wounds even as he coughed blood into his sleeve. They stayed, and you're still here. At the edge of the compound lies a pile of things too dangerous to burn. Metal tools, blood, caked aprons, plague hoods, the mask of the last doctor who failed to wake up. You buried him yourself. You remember the soil, how thick it was, how hard to dig when the wind blew salt and the shovel slipped. You don't remember crying, but you do remember thinking, He never wrote a letter. He just faded. You find yourself staring at that same pile now, looking for your own name among the scraps, wondering if one day you'll toss your gloves there too and say nothing, if your voice will disappear before your body does. A wind kicks up. You wrap your shawl tighter around your shoulders. The sea smells of rust and time. Inside, something moves. You freeze. A whisper of cloth. A nudge of breath. The candle is out. You didn't blow it out. Your heart stutters. You reach instinctively for your mask. Slide it on. The familiar scent of time fills your lungs. You step inside the dark. Nothing. But the cot by the door, the one that's been empty for weeks, is no longer empty. A figure lies beneath the sheet. Thin, still, masked, you step closer and realize it's not someone new. It's your own robe laid out like a body, the old beak mask atop the pillow. Your gloves folded over the chest like you'd passed away in perfect order. You didn't put it there. You touch the mask. It's warm, as if worn just moments ago. You feel something tighten in your chest. A knot of memory, maybe, or just air that no longer feels like yours. That night, you boil lavender. Not for healing, for clarity. The infirmary smells softer now, less like death, more like a room that used to be alive. You write something on the back of a chart, not your name, just a note. The candle is not for the dead, it's for those who haven't left yet. You leave it beside the tray and light another taper. Sleep comes in flashes. You dream of chairs rocking without weight, of ink wells refilling themselves, of a cough that echoes down a corridor you never built, of hands not yours tucking in the edge of your blanket. You wake to an open window. You didn't open it. The air smells like figs. One morning you find boot prints, not yours, leading from the main hallway to the apothecary's shelf. The dust is disturbed. A jar of rosewater untouched since the last nurse left is missing. But you find it hours later by the cot, next to your robe. Someone placed it there like a gift, or an offering, or a reminder. You're not sure what it means. You just tighten your gloves and whisper aloud, "I am the last. I will remember this place. A storm is coming." You feel it in the joints. The shutters creak. The sky bruises. The air swells with something unsaid. You sit beside the cot and clean. A child's slipper, wedged in the corner beneath the cracked wooden pew. Too small for your own foot, too light to make a sound, but there it sits, as if the child stepped out of it mid-breath and forgot to return. You crouch slowly, careful not to disturb the silence, not out of reverence, out of fear that it might crack and spill. You pick up the slipper, faded blue velvet, a gold ribbon still tied, the kind a wealthy merchant's daughter might have worn to mass, before the bells stopped ringing. The plague chapel holds its breath around you. You clings to the stone walls like gossip. The crucifix above the altar tilts just slightly, as if Christ himself tried to lean away from what was coming. And near the doorway, where wind sneaks in through the rotted beams, a single mask watches you from a hook on the wall. The beak, the black glass eyes, still waiting to be worn. No one's supposed to be here. Not anymore. San Servolo Island was sealed, boarded, cleared, a Venetian quarantine colony turned into a final resting ground. The myth says the doctors left when the bells stopped, that they fled in gondolas under cover of fog, their long black coats flapping like funeral flags. But the mask is here, the tools are laid out on the table, and the last candle is still burning. Your boots echo in the empty nave. Each step sounds like a question. At the front of the room, you find a worn leather satchel. Not sealed, not hidden, just left behind. You sit beside it, cross-legged like a schoolchild. Your joints ache from the cold, from time, from memory. You lift out each object, one by one. A small jar of crushed rose petals. Not for treatment, for scent. A kindness, a long iron probe, rusted at the tip. Not for surgery, for checking if the patient still breathed. A hand mirror, cracked. Not for vanity, for watching your own face when your mask was off, just to see if your color had changed. You swallow something dry in your throat. They didn't run. That's what begins to settle in your chest. Someone stayed, not just because of duty or faith, but because the island was too full of silence, too full of names no one else would remember. You move toward the small back chamber. the one where the doctors slept, or didn't sleep. The sheets on the cot are still rumpled, as if someone just rose and stepped out to light that last candle. A wooden bowl rests on the nightstand, and inside, water, now dust, and 3 sprigs of rosemary. You lift one to your nose, still faintly bitter, still faintly green. There's a journal beside the bowl, not locked. Its leather binding is brittle with age, but the pages whisper as you open them. No title, no author, only entries, dated, sparse, April 3, 1006, 131 child brought in daughter of the fishmonger, fever high. I packed the mask with cloves, but the smell of her skin still came through. April 6, she's gone. Her slipper fell when they took her. I couldn't pick it up. April 10, 3 others gone. All I do is write names. That's not healing, but it's what I have left. You close the book. So it was his slipper, the one you found, the one he couldn't bear to touch. Outside, the wind shifts. You hear a distant bell, faint, hollow, just one note, as if the island remembered its duty. They say plague doctors were cold. Merciless, bird-headed phantoms paid by the state to drag bodies and count deaths. But here was a man who kept rosemary by his bed, who named the dead in ink so they wouldn't vanish, who left behind his mask, not in haste, but in grief. No, he didn't flee. He stayed until his candle was the only one burning. You wander back into the nave, holding the journal close. There's dust on the benches, but not where he sat. There's rot on the rafters, but not above the altar. Somehow, the island preserved the exact shape of him, the exact silence. You think of your own hands, what they've touched. What they couldn't hold, they ache, not just from the cold, but from the weight of things left undone. Letters you didn't send, rooms you didn't return to, names you stopped saying aloud. You sit on the front pew, journal in your lap. You light a second candle beside the first. You don't know why. Maybe it's habit. Maybe it's hope. Or maybe you just don't want him to burn alone. The wind is softer now. The mask still hangs, untouched. You run your thumb along the cracked edge of the mirror. Your face is there, warped. Dim but present, someone stayed. Someone wrote the names, lit the fire, kept a bowl of rosemary on his nightstand, and so the room wouldn't smell entirely of death. History doesn't say his name, but maybe it didn't need to. He left it in every corner of this chapel, every page, every breath, and maybe you weren't supposed to find it. Maybe it. The rats have gone quiet. That's the first thing you notice this morning, if this still counts as morning, and if notice still means anything here. There's no squeaking in the stone cracks, no gnawing, no tiny black shadows darting behind crates, only the dry hush of a windless corridor and your own breathing, too loud in your ears, and the candle, still burning. You didn't light it. It's the stub of the one from yesterday, you're sure of that. The one you'd watch drip like a wounded thing. But somehow it stands tall again, flame steady, wax smooth as if untouched. And it's not the only thing. Someone has wiped the dust from the brass basin by the window. Not completely, just one careful circle, as if a gloved hand tested the weight of memory there. A crescent moon of absence in a sea of grime. You don't move for a long time, because to move would be to admit you're awake. And if you're awake, you're alone, and if you're alone, who lit the candle, you finally stand, slowly, knees stiff from stone and sleep. The apothecary table is not how you left it. The dried orange peels are gone. A bottle of camphor is open. The mortar has been rinsed. Nothing more. But those are not signs of ghosts. Those are signs of someone who still believes it matters. In the chapel, that little round room with its ceiling cracked like a dried fig, you find another object out of place. The doctor's mask. You left it on the hook. Now it rests on the pew like a sleeping bird. Beak bent sideways, eye lenses dimmed by fog or time. It looks almost human from this angle, exhausted, maybe, or mourning. You think about picking it up, but something about its stillness tells you. It was placed here with purpose. You sit instead. The wooden bench sighs under your weight. And for the first time in days, maybe weeks, you don't feel watched. You feel, remembered, the island was meant to forget people. That was its job. You know that now. Venetian law didn't allow the sick into the city, nor the dying, nor even the maybe sick. Barges would ferry them to islands like this little limestone dots on the edge of maps. Outposts of mercy that smelled like rot. San Servolo, Lazaretto Vecchio, Povglia, names that meant nothing and everything depending on who spoke them. Here, the plague doctor was not a myth. He was maintenance. You used to believe the myth, though, the one most still think, that plague doctors were brilliant men of science, that their beaked masks were powerful filters packed with herbs, yes, but guided by understanding. But not quite. The truth is quieter. The masks were guesswork. The coats were leather, to keep the stench off. The stick was not a pointer for diagnoses, it was to poke corpses from a distance. Many doctors were not even doctors. They were hired men, untrained, poor, sometimes criminals, offered coin for risking their lungs. Others were clerks or gravediggers, and their job was not to cure. It was to count, to write down who died and when, to cart away the ones who wouldn't stop coughing, to sign the papers no priest would touch. They were scribes of silence, and many stayed behind when everyone else fled. You rise from the pew, heart oddly full. You don't know why. Back in the infirmary, the cot next to yours has new wrinkles in its sheet. A dent in the pillow. You laugh quietly, a dry, papery thing, and say aloud, "Well, that's new." Your voice bounces. Then dies. You want to believe it was a rat. You need to believe it was a rat. But you've not seen one in 3 days now. Not a tail, not a whisker, and someone left a half-filled water cup by your bed. You spend the afternoon cleaning, not from belief, but from habit. You sweep the hall with the broom of reeds, its bristles barely clinging together. You scrape dried vomit from the floor of room 6, just one small patch near the corner. You almost gag, but you don't. The smell is ancient, like grief buried too long. In the garden, the lemon tree has lost all its leaves, but in the soil, under a loose stone, you find a folded scrap of parchment. Not a note, a drawing. It's a sketch of the quarantine bell tower, the one outside, that never rings anymore. But this version is different. In the picture, smoke rises from the tower's top. A candle sits in its belfry, and next to it a figure, masked, watching. You don't sleep much that night. The cot creaks, but you don't turn. You hear something metallic like tongs clink against stone, but when you look, nothing. Only the candle, still burning, still, fresh. By day 3, you start talking aloud. Not to yourself, to him. "Morning, doctor." You say as you wash your face. Wind still dead. No boats again. You think you hear a scrape behind the infirmary door. Can you smell the camphor? You ask at lunch, spooning thin gruel from a bowl you didn't prepare. Or is that just the lemons rotting? That night, you find a small sachet by your pillow. Lavender and cloves. You weep, but you do it quietly, the kind of crying that doesn't make sound, just heat, just wet, the kind you've done too many times to count. Somehow, things improve, not miraculously, not all at once, but gently. The lice are gone from your blanket. The sour bread doesn't give you cramps anymore. Your hands cracked and raw from weeks of vinegar begin to heal. And though no new boats arrive, no guards come, and no word from Venice ever reaches your ears, you don't feel forgotten anymore. You feel studied, cared for in small, strange ways, as if someone somewhere wrote your name down and didn't cross it out. One evening, you leave a note in the hallway. Thank you. You can sit if you want. You place it beside the pew. You light a candle. You walk away. You don't hear footsteps, but in the morning, the note is gone, in its place. You open the wooden drawer slowly. Inside, the mask is waiting. Not just any mask. The mask, long, beaked, heavy. Its black leather is cracked like old knuckles, and that beak, more bone than cloth, still holds dried remnants of crushed herbs, long faded into a sharp, bitter nothing. No one remembers what they used to put in there. Lavender, maybe, vinegar, dipped sponge, thyme, or ashes from yesterday's fire, for luck. You lift it with both hands, though it's not that heavy, but it always feels heavier when it stares back at you. Its 2 eye holes like the hollow sockets of an unburied skull. The mask was never for breathing. It was for distance, and that was the real trick. You slide it on, and just like that, the world disappears. Smells muffled, voices distant, the air thick as soup. And now you are no longer you. You are the doctor, the figure they fear, the shape they trust, the last man they see before the fever wins. Today, you walk into the salt room. That's what they call it, not because it's full of salt, but because that's what the islanders used to pour on wounds, on meat, on memories. Now the walls are lined with linen, strips of cloth, each marked with the names of those who came here last. Some soaked red, some still wet. Your boots stick faintly to the stone floor. Something spilled here days ago. Maybe vinegar, maybe worse. You don't ask. You just keep walking. There's a boy on the cot. No older than 12. His cheeks have sunk. His lips are dry, but his eyes, still bright, still watching. You kneel beside him. The mask creaks as you move. He doesn't flinch. Are you death? He asks. You pause. The question stings more than the vinegar ever did. No. You say quietly, I'm the one who comes after him. You remember when this island was loud. Seagulls shrieking. Duckhands arguing over barrels. Laughter from the lantern, lit courtyard where patients once danced. Before the last ship came in. Before the doors were locked. Now, even the wind seems cautious. It tiptoes past your windows, avoids your chimney. Treats the whole island like a church. There's a myth, of course, that plague doctors never died, that the beak protected them, that the mask was magical. But that wasn't the truth. The truth was simpler. They did die. Often they just died slowly, silently, alone, because when you wear the mask, you stop being someone people visit. You become someone they hide from. You sit on the wooden stool in the corner of the ward. The same stool you've used for weeks. Its grooves match your spine now. Its splinters are familiar. You think of your wife's face. You think of your daughter's laugh. You think of how long it's been since anyone said your name. Maybe the mask is safer because it makes you forget yourself. There's another body to wrap. You roll the linen gently around the limbs, one arm at a time. You never rush, it matters. Even now, you tie the last knot. Then light the rosemary bundle at the door. It smokes softly, fills the room with that strange scent, half kitchen, half funeral. Another ritual no one remembers the rules for. But you do it anyway. That's what this whole island is. A place for doing what no one else wants to remember. You pass by the apothecary shelf. Its jars are nearly empty now. Mouse ear, pennyroyal, clove. A single jar holds tiny stones from the mainland. Not medicine. Just comfort. You take one, slip it in your coat pocket. One day, if you leave this place, you'll want to remember it was real. You return to the courtyard at dusk. The crows are circling overhead. Again, you've given up shoeing them. They know more than you do anyway. A boot lies half, buried in the mud. You don't pick it up. It was his, probably, the one with the shaky hands. You'd forgotten his name, but not the way he always cried before sleeping. The mask creaks as you look away. The sun dips behind the bell tower. No one rings it anymore. It only chimes when the wind is cruel. You pull the candle from your satchel, your last one. You set it on the stone ledge and strike the match. It flickers, struggles, then settles into a soft, stubborn glow. The flame dances like a heartbeat. You write in the ledger, the same entry as always. Patient 43 fever broke. Patient 44 passed quietly. Patient 45 holding. There's no one left to read it, but you still write. Ink scratches the paper like a whisper, and then you hear it. Footsteps, not your own, not the wind, not the rustle of a rat in the walls. Actual steps. You rise slowly. The mask groans as you turn toward the corridor. Your breath fogs the glass of your eyepieces. The hallway is empty, but the candle flickers again. Not from wind, from air movement. Someone's here. Or was, or maybe it's just the memory of someone too stubborn to leave. You sit back down. The candle burns lower. You listen to the silence like it's a story being read to you. Outside, the crows have stopped. Somewhere in the ward, a bed creaks. And still, the mask watches the door. Waiting, breathing for you, and you wonder, what happened? You wake to the sound of wind breathing through broken shutters. It isn't morning. It isn't night. It's that colorless hour between them when the world forgets what time means, and even ghosts seem unsure of their schedules. Your cot groans as you sit up. The walls around you are thin plaster, blotched with mildew, and someone has scratched tally marks into the wood of the doorframe. 50, 7, or 50, 8. hard to say. One is crossed out in rage, your throat is dry, your fingers ache, your boots are still damp. You've slept in the makeshift infirmary again, curled beside a cabinet of crumbling bandages, and dried rosemary hung like forgotten laundry. There's a copper basin near the window, the water inside it is still, not a ripple. You glance toward the door, it's ajar, and someone has left a single white glove on the floor outside. Not yours. Not the boy's. You step toward it. You trace the corridor where sunlight used to crawl. Now just a gray hush clings to the stone, a silence that settles into your teeth. You walk slowly, your breath fogging the air even though it's midsummer. The glove lies limp, delicately creased, as though the hand inside it was lifted away suddenly, leaving its shell behind. You kneel and pick it up. Inside, stitched faintly in gold thread near the hem, a date. 1618. You blink, that was before. Before the first fevered girl was rowed to the island, before the wailing began in every corner of Venice, before you came, you turn the glove over. The leather smells like cloves and salt and something much older, something that remembers blood. Downstairs, the apothecary shelves groan under the weight of untouched bottles. Some are labeled in Latin, others in a doctor's hurried scrawl. A few are simply marked with excess. The bottle you pick up is small and thick, filled with an amber syrup that doesn't move when you tilt it. It's sealed with red wax. The tag reads, "For the body that won't burn." You put it back. On the far counter, you find his journal. Not yours, his, the other plague doctor, the one they say arrived months before you did, the one who never left. You flip the first page, a drawing, not a word. A crude sketch of a child, face hidden behind a bird's mask. Beside it, a house on stilts, a raft of rats underneath. Below that, a single phrase in tiny script. If you listen long enough, the dead begin to whisper back. You turn the page and the next, diagrams of strange devices. Needles, pumps, long glass tubes filled with colorless liquids. One tool is labeled, soul extractor untested. Another, vapor hood isolate thought from madness. You pause. This isn't medicine. This is something else, something older than any university approved, older than logic. Outside, the bell hasn't rung in days. The boy stopped ringing it after his voice cracked, after his mother stopped responding. You find him sitting at the edge of the cistern, fishing with a stick. There are no fish here, there never were. You sit beside him anyway. I saw a ship. He says, eyes not leaving the water. You follow his gaze. The sea is dull and flat. No ship. He shrugs. I didn't say it was today. He drops the stick into the water. Silence. Then, did you ever see him? You don't ask who. He means the first doctor, the one whose mask was made of black horn, the one who whispered to the dead when he thought no one could hear. You lie and say no, because if you told the truth, if you told the boy you saw him last night, standing beside your cot, you're not sure what that would do to him. Or to you, that night you light a candle, one of the last. You set it near the broken door and watch the flame flicker in rhythm with your breath. You pull the glove from your coat pocket, run your fingers across the stitching again. 1618. Why did he leave it? Or did he? There are rumors, of course. The nurses whispered them before they fled. That he never left because there was nothing human left in him to leave. That he had started binding his bones with ribbon soaked in ash. That he had forgotten his name, but remembered every disease by taste. You shake your head. Just stories. The candle sputters once, then steadies. You tell yourself you're not waiting for him. You're just watching the flame, but your hands keep curling around the glove like it's a relic. At midnight, a voice, not loud, not kind, but clear. You shouldn't have read the journal. You freeze. Your heart thuds like boots on stone. You don't turn around, not yet. The voice sighs. I wrote those pages to forget, not to be remembered. A long pause. Then, softer. Is it still burning? You nod. Then realize he can't see you. Yet the wood groans again, but this time, it's not from your feet. You freeze mid-step. The corridor is too narrow to turn quickly, and too quiet to pretend you imagined it. You don't breathe. You simply listen. Somewhere above, or behind, or maybe beneath the wooden slats, something stirs, just once, and then falls silent again. You reach for the candle. It's burning lower than before. The wax has run down its spine like a sickly tear. Silent stillness, but you know the sound was real. And in plague houses like this, silence was never a comfort. It meant someone had stopped moving. You pass the door where the herbalist once kept dried poppy heads strung on twine. You used to joke that they looked like hanged men. She didn't laugh. No one really did, even then. She'd gone first, not from the plague, but from slipping on her own steep stair. A broken neck. No one touched her body for 2 days, until the doctor came and placed coins on her eyes like they might bribe her into staying still. You wonder if she ever truly left. You wonder that about a lot of people lately. There are fewer rats now. That should be a relief, but it isn't. You glance toward the edge of the wall where the wooden beam has split. A pair of eyes catch the light, beady black, half-curious, then another pair. And another, but they don't scurry, they just sit, watching. Rats used to flee, now they observe, as if they've grown used to your footsteps, or to the scent of death clinging to your boots. You reach the third hallway, the quarantine corridor. The air here is different, more still, like it's been held in someone's lungs too long. You tug your cloth mask closer to your face, even though there's nothing alive behind these doors anymore. Supposedly, the doctor sealed this hall last with wax. You remember watching his gloved hands tremble. He said it wasn't just infection. He said sometimes the soul doesn't leave all at once. The walls are chalked with symbols. Triangles and loops, some childish, others careful. Protective charms drawn by desperate hands. One of them says stay silent. Another says he watches by night. The third is scratched over entirely. You open a door, slowly. Inside is a child's room, or rather, what's left of one. A wooden horse leans sideways in the dust, a blanket half, eaten by moths still tucked into the corner. The candlelight catches a mirror, and you flinch, your own mask glinting back at you. Blank eyes, beak like nose, no expression, no comfort. This was the room where the girl with the violet ribbon died. She kept whispering that she had a twin sister. No one ever found such a girl. The doctor said it was fever, dreams. But you saw the ribbon tied twice around her wrist, and once, when you blinked, you swore you saw 2 shadows beneath the bed. Another groan, louder this time, not wood, a drawer. You step backward. Quietly, candle held higher, the light reveals a shape in the hallway. You almost call out, almost, but you remember now. Calling out has a cost. The doctor had warned you. Not everything that walks wears shoes. And not everything that listens with ears. You let the wax drip onto your hand to remind yourself you're still alive. The burn is sharp but familiar. Pain has become the proof you still exist. You turn and move faster, not toward the exit. There isn't one anymore. The house has shifted as it does when no one's watching. You pass the dining room, the long table still set for 13. Bowls of ash. Forks rusted midair, one chair overturned. You think of the baker who lived here. She'd made sweet buns with raisins shaped like eyes. Said it helped children pretend the dead could still look back. You'd laughed then. You don't laugh now. Outside, the fog presses against the windows like damp hands. The city is sleeping or dying. It's hard to tell the difference these days. The myths say plague doctors were saviors, that they cured and carried and prayed, but the truth is, most couldn't even help themselves. Their masks didn't filter disease. The herbs in the beak were for smell, not safety. They wore waxed coats, not because they worked, but because they were told to. Even then, hope had its uniform. You reach the narrow stair. The top step always creaks. It still does. That's something, at least. The room above is warmer. That should be impossible. No fire burns. No body breathes, but the warmth feels human, recent, like someone just left or didn't. The doctor's bag is still here, open, vials half, filled, a scalpel resting beside a dried orange peel. A note in his handwriting, do not trust what knocks, the sick don't knock. You remember when you last saw him, standing by the window, unmoving. You wake to a sound you can't place, not a bell, not a voice, not the creak of a cart. It's softer than all of those, just a scratching, like a rat, maybe, or like a feather dragging across parchment. You blink, and it's darker than it should be. Someone has shuttered the upper windows. The daylight has no spine. It limps in sideways, and even the dust motes seem cautious. You sit up, slowly, and the blanket falls off your chest. There's a mark there now, a small one, purple, slightly swollen with a darker center. No pain. You brush it with your fingers and wince not from the mark, but from the cold in your joints. It's in your knuckles, your elbows, the backs of your knees. You move like someone else's marionette. The scratching continues. You follow it, down the hallway, left at the stairs, into the physician's room. There, at the desk, sits a plague doctor, still, hunched. Mask gleaming faintly. He hasn't turned. He is writing. That sound, that's what it was. His gloved hand dragging a quill across parchment. A list. A long one. You step closer. His head tilts not in greeting, not in alarm. Just enough to show he knows you're there, then back to the page. You glance down, names, dozens, maybe hundreds, each line written with obsessive neatness, each followed by dates, descriptions, illnesses. Sometimes drawings, little sketches of boils or blackened toes, bones bent out of shape. Your name isn't on the list, yet you stare at the ink. It's red, brown, not black. You don't ask what it's made of. The doctor turns a page, a fresh one, still blank. He doesn't write your name, not yet, but he's waiting. You wander out again, as if you could outrun a page. The streets are even quieter today. No dogs. No carts, just wind. There are sheets hanging from second. Story windows, white ones, tied to brooms and poles. You know what that means now. A sign for the watchers. This house is touched. It's a strange sort of honesty, you think. In a town full of superstition, ghosts, and whispered cures, the one thing everyone believes in is a white sheet. You remember when you first read the pamphlet, the one tacked to the side of the bakery. The ink was already smudged, as if even the paper knew not to trust itself. Pestilence arrives not by stars nor curses, but by contact. It said the words plainly, almost kindly, not miasma, not divine punishment. Just something passed from hand to hand, from breath to breathe. You believed it, and you weren't supposed to. That was the strange part. Later, you're back in the square again. The woman with the red kerchief is gone. So is the boy who chewed fennel, but the scribbler remains. He always sits cross, legged on the edge of the well, sharpening a stick of charcoal. He doesn't sell anything, doesn't speak, just sketches. People, faces, dead ones mostly. You peek over his shoulder. Today, he's drawing a child's mouth. Just the mouth, gaping open as if mid. Breath or mid. Scream, it's hard to tell. He glances up, eyes sunken but alert, and says softly, "You're not a person anymore." You tilt your head. He adds, "You're a list of symptoms." And just like that, he returns to his drawing. That night, your neighbor burns her mattress in the alley. You can hear it crackling. She doesn't do it quietly. She weeps as she sets the flame. Her hands are stained with something that doesn't come off. You watch her from the window, unsure whether to be moved or horrified. Somewhere behind her, her child watches too, wrapped in a sheet. People talk about plague doctors like they were executioners in disguise, like the beaked mask was a tool of fear, like they came only when it was too late. But that's a myth or half of one. They were not the villains of this story. They were men who walked into breathless houses with cloth between their fingers, who sniffed sweet herbs to keep from gagging, who held the hands of dying children even when no one else would. The beak wasn't a horror mask. It was a filter, a shield, sometimes stuffed with rose petals, sometimes vinegar, soaked cloth. They didn't always survive. In fact, most didn't, but they came anyway. You saw one once, not the one in your house now, but years ago. He limped. His left boot was patched at the heel. He sat with your cousin for 2 hours before she died, and he never flinched once. Back in the hallway, you hear it again. Scratch, scratch. The list is growing. You touch the mark on your chest again. It's darker now, not painful, just present, like something whispering from under your skin. You think of all the things no one counted: the unmarked graves, the burned clothes. The bucket isn't where it should be. You blink slowly. The morning light hasn't arrived. Yet your body believes the hour has changed. That soft, aching numbness behind your eyes tells you something has moved. Shifted, gone missing, so you sit up. A thin wool blanket slips from your chest to your lap, still damp with your sweat from the night before. You run your hand across the stone floor beside your cot, searching. Nothing, the small wooden bucket where you always keep the fennel water gone. It was there last night. You're certain. The wood creaked when you placed it down. You rise. Your knees crack. That sound has become its own language in these months. Your joints speak of weight, of waiting, of the same few steps across the same small space, again and again and again. You lean against the wall for balance, listening, but the silence isn't empty. It's hiding something. The hallway smells different now. Not worse, you're too far gone for that. The rot, the vinegar, the linen steeped in herbs, those are constants, but there's a sweetness tonight, thin as thread, almost perfumed. You pause by the door, press your ear against the wood. No footsteps, no breathing, just that faint sweetness, almost like almonds. Almost like death trying something new. The fennel water wasn't the only thing that moved. The oil lamp in the hallway, the one that always flickered low, now burns with an odd, steady glow. Not golden, not orange, just. Wrong. You watch it for a moment, feeling your body slow, like your own blood is unsure what to do next. The flame doesn't dance, it waits. Down the corridor, near the surgical room. The door is ajar. That door never hangs open, not even when the wind pushes, not even when the plague doctor himself passes through. He always closes it, that heavy, deliberate way he pulls the iron ring, like ending a sentence. You know because you've heard that sentence close too many times. Inside, the table is clean, too clean. Not just wiped, scraped. The wood glows pale and dry, stripped of its usual stains. You don't understand. This table has known too much. It shouldn't look like this, not even when it was new. You step inside and touch it. The surface feels cold, dry. It smells faintly of soap and fire. You run your fingers along the edges, and then you see it. A line thin and strange traced across the wood like a map etched in reverse. Not carved, burned. You follow it with your nail, but it stops abruptly near the far end. There, hanging just below the ledge, a mask, the beak, the long, nosed mask of the plague doctor. You don't touch it. You sit down and you stare. The mask has never been here before, never left behind. He wore it always, even when no one else was near, even when he was alone with the corpses, even when he leaned over your shoulder and whispered, "This one might live." He never removed it. But now it lies on the edge of the table like a peeled fruit rind. There's something inside it, not stuffing, not fabric, something small. You lean forward, careful not to knock the mask over. There, just barely visible in the beak, a folded piece of parchment. You reach in and remove it. It smells like wormwood and wax. Your fingers tremble as you open it, smoothing the creases gently. There are only 3 words written, but they are in your handwriting. He already left. You drop the parchment. Step back, hit the wall behind you. No, that's not right. You never wrote that. You never would. Would you? Your legs weaken. You sit again, harder this time. The table presses cold against your forearms. The air has changed again. Now it smells like something old, like prayer books or parchment set aflame too slowly. Something is unraveling, not the world, you. There are stories, of course there are. You heard them in the first weeks, before the priest stopped coming, before the baker's boy vanished, before your own cousin coughed blood into your shoulder and said, "Tell mother I kept her ring." The stories say plague doctors were priests. Others say they were criminals, forced to wear the mask. Others say they were nothing at all, just shapes in the fog. One thing is certain, they never stayed after the dying ended, and the dying never ends. So why is his mask still here? Why? Did he leave it? Your mouth is dry. You go to fetch water from the courtyard barrel. The night air clings like damp cloth, heavy, sour, still. You push open the side door. And you stop, because in the center of the courtyard, the last hour of night hums like an old wound. You're awake, again, still. The blanket itches your arms where the skin is peeling. Your throat is dry, but you've stopped asking for water. No one brings it anymore. The wooden bowl beside your bed is crusted over with something black. Maybe soup, maybe blood, maybe both. You blink slowly. He's still there, sitting on the stool in the corner, as if carved from a darker wood than the rest of the room. His beaked mask catching a sliver of light from the candle, the last one. Still burning. You remember when he first appeared days ago. Or was it weeks? Time folds strangely when your muscles ache and your nails start curling inward from hunger. But he didn't leave, even when everyone else did. Even when the priest stopped coming to whisper prayers through the crack in the shutters. Even when your neighbors' doors were marked with white chalk and later with red slashes. Even when your sister's body was taken from the next bed and wrapped in tar cloth, her necklace left behind on the floor like a forgotten question. Still, the plague doctor didn't leave. Your eyes flutter open again sometime near dawn. He's adjusting his gloves. The sound of leather against leather is oddly soothing, like rain on waxed paper. He doesn't speak, he never has, but sometimes you think you hear something inside the beak. A slow inhale, a sigh, or maybe it's just the wind pushing against the rotted window frame. You want to ask, why are you still here? But your voice cracked days ago. You only manage a cough, low and wet. He tilts his head slightly, like he heard a secret you didn't mean to share. There's a myth people used to repeat before they stopped talking, that the beak was filled with magic herbs. Vervain, lavender, mint leaves soaked in vinegar. They said the plague doctor could not die, that the scent kept death away, that the mask saw through sickness. They said he would walk into a room of corpses and come out untouched. That wasn't true. The herbs were real, yes, often stuffed in cloth and packed tight into the beak to mask the smell of rot, but they didn't protect anyone. Many doctors died within days of entering the homes of the infected. Their masks caught sweat, their gloves split at the seams, their robes soaked in filth. Still, they came not because they were holy or untouchable, but because someone had to close the eyes of the dying. He leans forward now, checking the wax in the candle. It's halves, bent, curled around itself like a sleeping mouse. You imagine he's counting the minutes, or weighing whether he should light another when this one dies. Whether it matters, whether you'll still be breathing by then. The candle smells like lard and old sheep fat. You wonder where they even found one this late in the plague. All the chandlers in the town square had shut their stalls weeks ago. Burned down, some said. Looted, others whispered. So why? Does he have one left? Your dreams return, fragile and strange. You are walking through the bathhouse. Your childhood one, not the real place, but how your memory remembers it. Smooth tiles underfoot, hot air and eucalyptus steam. You see your father in the corner, pouring water over a cracked soapstone basin. You call out to him. He doesn't turn. You wake up shivering. The room is too cold now. A draft slips through the ceiling cracks, kissing your spine. The plague doctor hasn't moved. He is watching the flame. It was never just the plague, you realize. That's what they always said, as if it were one thing. But there were many plagues, and many deaths that didn't come from boils or fevers. There was the hunger plague when grain shipments stopped and rats grew bold. There was the silence plague when no one dared speak and name aloud, afraid it might bring death down like a hawk. And there was the forgetting plague when people started burning birth records, parish scrolls, any trace that someone had once lived and breathed and loved. Sometimes the worst part wasn't the dying. It was the erasing. You blink. He's closer now, still seated, but the stool has shifted, or maybe you did. His gloved hand rests gently on the edge of your mattress, not touching, just near. He smells faintly of vinegar and ash. You think you remember a time when your mother soaked rags in vinegar to keep the flies away. She used to hang them from the rafters, strips of linen fluttering like ghosts in a summer kitchen. Wind presses against the crumbling shutters. You don't open them. There are too many stories in the wind tonight. One sounds like a child coughing, another like the creak of a surgeon's cart, but those are just sounds the sea wind makes. You tell yourself that, over and over, in this old Venetian quarantine house, surrounded by waters thick with salt and silt. Time no longer moves in straight lines. The candle by your side has nearly burned to the base again. You've replaced it 14 times since sunset, and still, no one has come back for you. You pick up the ledger, the one the plague doctor once wrote in. His handwriting starts clear, neat, almost lyrical. But the further you flip toward the end, the worse it gets, slanted, shaky, dots where there should be words, blood where there should be ink. He kept writing even after the patients were gone, even after the last cart left the island. One line, written in a fevered hand, reads, "Their silence was contagious. The hallway feels longer tonight. You've walked it so many times you could pace it blind, and maybe you do. Your fingers graze along the damp walls, counting bricks, like you always do. 178. Always, and then the squeak of the loose board. Then the soft clink of glass where the medicine cabinet used to be. No mirror remains, of course. No one here wants to see their own face. The plague doctor's mask is still here, not hung neatly, but slumped, half, folded, like a bird that fell asleep and never woke up. It still smells of rosemary and ashes. The herbs inside the beak have gone brown and dry, but somehow they keep their shape. You turn away, but the eye holes follow. They always do. You open the patient room, the 7th one, not because you expect to find anyone, but because the bed still creaks like it remembers. The straw mattress is molded through, soaked with time and grief. But there's something beneath it you haven't dared to move until now, a folded sheet of parchment, old, damp, and inked with something that doesn't feel like ink. The island listens, it says, and it remembers. You go outside, just for air, just for a moment. The night hits you with the weight of silence. No gulls, no oars, no calls from the mainland. The dock is rotted through in places, but you sit anyway. You watch the candle in your hand flicker against the sea's reflection. Across the black water, Venice is barely aglow, not a city, just a smudge of ghostlight. The wind brings back the smell of vinegar and wool, the scent of old medicine, soaked cloth, and rooms that never got aired. And you remember the myth, the one they told. The plague doctor sealed himself in when the last ship left. He kept tending to empty beds, whispering to patients long gone. They say he stitched silence into the walls. You used to scoff, now you're not so sure, because the silence here doesn't feel empty. It feels practiced. In the apothecary chamber, there's a bowl of dried poppy heads still sitting in the corner. You grind them absently with a mortar. The sound comforts you, steady, repetitive, a rhythm older than language. You mix it with wine like the old instructions say. Just a drop on your tongue. Sleep comes harder now. It tastes like dust and lavender, but for a few hours you forget what day it is, who you were, why you're still here, and when you wake, you're still holding the vial. You try to count the names again. The ones carved into the walls, some have faded into the stone. Others look freshly scratched, though that's impossible. You recognize one, your own, not your... The bell stopped ringing, and for a moment it felt like the whole island forgot how to breathe. You sit cross-legged on the edge of a cracked fountain. The basin is dry, crusted with salt, filled now with crumpled gloves and faded herbs, mugwort, angelica root, and something sharp like cloves gone bitter. A pale feather floats down, perhaps from a seagull. Or perhaps not. You don't turn to look. The wind has a memory, and today it carries someone else's. You tilt your head. From the southern cell block, a soft clatter, not enough to startle, just enough to wake the edge of doubt. You left that building locked, didn't you? The padlock was rusted. The chain looped 3 times. You remember because you hesitated, watching your own hands shake slightly as you turned the key. But that was yesterday. And now you rise, slowly, like the cold's been braided into your spine. Each step toward the cell block feels padded, like walking through wool, stone to moss to wood. Your sandals barely whisper. The sun has dipped below the smoke line. Shadows soften everything. The door swings open, no lock, no resistance, just a quiet creak, like someone inside was waiting. Inside, the room smells of sweet rot and beeswax. On the cot, a bird. Mask. Plague doctors, but not the same one you saw last night. That one had a broken strap. This one is freshly stitched. Someone has cleaned the lenses with vinegar. You can still see the streaks from the cloth they used. Next to the mask, a long gloved hand, palm upward, still, not stiff like a corpse, not warm like the living. You don't touch it. You look down and see the boots, black leather, worn but laced tight. A person lying in full garb, no movement, but no decay, no smell, no plague. He looks, preserved or waiting. The wax on the shelf beside him is still warm. No one speaks, of course. There is no one left to. But sometimes silence hums. You reach into your bag, pull out a sheet of parchment. On it, you had scrawled the names of every survivor on day 3. There were 12. By day 9, only one name remained. Yours, the man in the bed. You don't know him, but his gloves match the ones you found in the chapel, and the ring on his finger, that gold band etched with thistle and rosemary. You saw it once, on a corpse being carted from the physician's quarters. Back when there were still carts, still horses, you whisper to him, just once, just a question, why are you still here? They say plague doctors were mercenaries, paid by the state, not the people. Their duty was to witness. Record burned, but that was in theory. In reality, many of them ran, some never showed up, and the ones who stayed, most went mad from the smell, the loneliness, the guilt. There was no cure, only protocol. Clean the air with juniper and oranges, soften the pus with leeches, stuff the beak with herbs, avoid the eyes of the dying, and still they died. You remember what the archivist told you before he boarded the final gondola off the island. He pressed a small box into your hand, cedar, smooth, heavy. If you find the doctor, he'd said, don't wake him, let him forget. But you opened the box anyway. Inside, a single silver bell and a note. Last rites are louder in silence. Back in the cell block, you watch the doctor's chest. Still no movement, but the candle hasn't gone out. You don't sit. You wait. You count. One breath, then another. Yours, not his, until a scrape. Not from the doctor, from the far wall. You step closer. The stone is uneven here. Moisture, dark. You press a hand against the edge, and it shifts behind the wall, a hidden corridor, and inside. More masks, more gloves, sealed jars labeled in Latin. Sanguis, lacrimae, mors, a blood. Tears, death, and journals. Pages and pages in a looping script. They told me I'd be alone. They didn't tell me I'd be erased. I burned the last child today. She asked for bread. You sit down on the dirt floor. Your breath feels like velvet, heavy, hot. This was no ordinary quarantine. This island wasn't just to isolate the infected. It was meant to swallow them, erase them from maps, from ledgers, from stories. And the doctor, he stayed, not because he believed in healing, but because someone had to remember. You take out your own notebook, blank, fresh. You dip a finger into one of the ink jars, and you write. Slowly, carefully, day 87. The doctor hasn't left. You sleep in the cell that night. The wind whines through the corridor, a soft, high-pitched moan. You clutch the box with the bell. You don't. The water hits the stones with the rhythm of a forgotten clock. Tick, tock, gone again. You sit on the cold step outside the apothecary hut, staring out across the black channel. Venice is just beyond it, but she may as well be a ghost. The lagoon glows faintly under a sickle moon, the way pewter reflects a dying candle. Somewhere beneath its surface, 1,000 buried secrets, and the bones of those the city would rather forget. You're still here. Still breathing, still, waiting. Behind you the candle hasn't yet burned out. You didn't light it, and you're starting to wonder if the plague doctor did. The wind tonight doesn't feel like salt. It feels like old paper, crumbling between your fingers, dragging stories across your skin. You don't remember falling asleep last night, only waking up with straw in your mouth and scratches on your arm you can't explain. The island is quiet, but it never feels empty. No birds, no bells, but always that sense of being watched. Politely, like a priest waiting for confession, you step back inside. The hut hasn't changed. Dust still curves along the corners like spider lace. The tools still sit on the table, laid out in a careful arc. A rusted scalpel, tongs that resemble bird claws, dried herbs that no longer smell of anything but time. There's a half-written note by the mortar in spidery Italian. If the fever returns, burn juniper beneath the tongue. no water. You didn't write that. You've never seen that handwriting before, and yet the ink is still wet. You sleep in the far corner now, not on the cot, but on the stone floor. The cot creaks too much, and it carries a smell you can't place. Leather and vinegar, almost like someone else's breath. You told yourself you'd air it out. You haven't. Some nights you hear it shift. Outside the door, nailed into a wooden beam, is a sign written in Latin. You found it your first week here half, covered by moss. It reads, "Abstin ut non redit." Stay away, lest it return. You scrubbed the moss off, polished the letters with a rag until they gleamed. You thought you were preserving it. A warning to no one, but one day last week the sign was gone, and the next morning, back again, but the wood was older, weathered as if it had hung there for years. No one brings you food anymore. The boat stopped weeks ago. The last man didn't look at you. He tossed the sack onto the shore with a spear and shoved off so quickly he nearly dropped his oar. Inside the bag, stale bread, dried garlic, and a thin bottle of clear liquid that burned your tongue. You think it was vinegar. You ate the bread in one day. The garlic lasted longer. You buried the bottle. Now you boil roots. You chew strips of bark. You crush snails with a flat stone and pretend it's medicine. You've stopped being hungry, mostly. Now you just feel thin, not in body, in memory, as if someone has begun to erase you, stroke by stroke. You tried to write a letter once to anyone, folded it neatly and left it in the empty chapel where pigeons used to live. You tucked it beneath the candle on the altar. When you came back the next night, the candle had burned to a stump, and the letter was gone. No breeze, no tracks, just absence. You checked again the following morning. There was a new letter, different paper, older, smelled of camphor and fire. It read, "Stop writing. You are not the only one who reads." The coat is still hanging on the peg, the plague doctor's coat. Long, black waxed linen, stiff, shaped like grief. You've never touched it. You don't plan to. But sometimes, in the half light, it seems to hang straighter than it should, like something is still inside it. Once, during a windless dusk, you swore you saw the edge sway. They say the plague doctor left in 1629, took the last gondola back to the main island, burned his records, and vanished into myth. That's what the books say. That's what the professors tell, but none of them lived here. None of them heard the soft shuffle of leather shoes on stone steps at midnight. None of them felt the tap of a cane outside the door long after curfew. You told yourself it was your imagination, but then why are there fresh scratches on the inside of the door frame? Why did someone draw tally marks on the underside of your cot? Why do you sometimes wake with gloves on your hands that you didn't put? You try not to step on the chalk outline. Someone drew it months ago, a crude oval shape with arms like crooked forks and legs slightly too short. The chalk has faded from white to a dusty gray, nearly indistinguishable from the stone beneath. But your feet know where it begins, and your body still avoids it, as if stepping there would wake something best left sleeping. This room was once a nursery. That's what the scratched sign on the doorframe says, Sala dei Bambini, the room of children. The letters were burned into the wood long ago, maybe by the hand of someone who didn't live to see the door opened again. You stand in the silence. There are no children here now. Just blank. It's stiff with age and shelves half, eaten by beetles. A single doll lies under the window. No face, no limbs. Just a bundle of cloth that must have once been held by small, trembling hands. The shape of memory, the outline of grief. You pick it up, then stop. There's something stuffed inside the cloth, not straw. Something denser, rice. The doll is filled with dried rice, still intact. A practical detail for quarantine, soft enough to hold, impossible to carry disease. Clever, you wonder if it worked. You set it back down. The nursery feels heavier than the other rooms, even now. As if the air here still remembers small lungs gasping. As if the silence hasn't been disturbed in centuries, not by birds, not by bells, not even by dreams. And still, somehow, the beds are made. Who made them? Why did they smooth the sheets long after no one would return? There is a corridor at the back of the nursery, narrow, almost hidden behind the hearth. It leads downward, through a chipped archway, to a different part of the lazaretto, you haven't yet explored the chapel crypt. No maps mark it, but you've seen it drawn, faintly, in the margins of a dead medic's notebook. And now you stand at its edge. The corridor smells like salt and mildew. Your shoes stick slightly to the ground, and the stones here are different, older, with strange shapes chiseled along the sides. Glyphs, no. Their names, Latin, almost all of them crossed out. Beneath each name a tiny phrase, non restitutus. Not restored, not healed, not saved. You hold your lantern higher. The ceiling dips lower. At one point you have to duck, and that's when you feel something brush your shoulder. Just the edge of your robe catching on loose stone. But for a second your breath freezes. You're sure something moved. You whisper not to call out, but to steady yourself. Stillness is not safety, but it is something. Your voice disappears into the curve of the passage, swallowed, as if this part of the lazaretto no longer accepts sound. You walk on anyway. The crypt is a circular space, ceiling domed, no coffins, no markers, just empty shelves carved deep into the stone. Ossuaries, they stacked bones here. But now the shelves are mostly empty save for one object. A plague mask lying flat in the dust, beak cracked, leather strap broken, black glass eyes both intact, staring up at you from the stone like a creature too tired to speak. This was not your mask, but you recognize it. Every doctor who worked here had one issued. The lenses were polished with vinegar, the beak stuffed with mint and clove. Not to protect the patient, no, but to keep the doctor from choking on the scent of rot. You kneel beside it. There's something underneath, a square of parchment, sealed in wax, still crisp. You don't break the seal. You don't need to. The symbol on it is familiar, not religious, not medical. A merchant's mark, a family crest erased from Venice's records a century ago. So, he was from the mainland, not just a healer, a man from wealth who chose to stay. The myth says plague doctors were forced to remain on quarantine islands imprisoned alongside the dying. But the truth, some of them chose not to leave, even when they could have, even when the boat was waiting. You sit there for a long while, not thinking, not hoping, just breathing. The crypt is so quiet, it amplifies the softest sounds, your eyelid blinking, your jaw clicking, your ribs shifting under the breath you've learned to control, and then you hear something else, dripping. The wind has changed. You notice it before you hear it, by the way the door moans without opening, and how the candle nearest the ledger burns sideways. The sky outside has gone bruised and trembling, like an old man's eyelid. A rainstorm brews quietly out at sea, just beyond the glassless windows, but it doesn't matter. You've sealed the shutters with wax and linen. No air should be moving inside the quarantine house, and yet the air shifts. Something in the cellar is breathing. You sit very still. You've gotten good at this, haven't you? The stillness, the patient listening, the hours spent studying things that never respond. Ledgers, bones, old wine stains, broken jars, the one wax ear you found behind the apothecary shelf. But breathing, that's new. Your spine is aching again. You rise, not because you want to, but because you always do. When something strange calls you, you walk toward it. That was always your job. That was your oath. That is your curse. Down the stairs, past the bundled herbs hanging like forgotten prisoners, past the shelf where the rat skeleton still lies in its linen coffin. You take the candle, you're only one left. Its light trembles as you reach the bottom step. The cellar is where they stored the overflow, not people, not usually just gear. Quarantine robes, extra masks, books no one read, jars of dried ox, tongue, and burned rosemary. Anything that might be needed if another ship arrived with coughing mouths and bloodied sheets. The cellar is also where the ceiling leaks when it rains. It drips into a brass bowl in the corner, and tonight it is that bowl that's breathing, or rather, something near it. You move closer. There, just beside the bowl, is a shape you did not place. Not a body. A bundle, cloth, brown with dust, sewn shut crudely, as if stitched by shaking hands. It looks almost like a laundry sack, except something heavy is curled within it, hunched like a sleeping animal or a person made small by grief. You kneel, and the candle flickers low. You do not want to open it, but you must. You press your fingers into the seam and peel the cloth back. The stitching tears like damp thread, and inside ash, at first, just ash. But then, beneath that bone, not large, not adult, a small ribcage scorched and curled inwards like a wilted leaf, and there, tucked into the hollow where a heart once beat, an object, a child's wooden toy. A carved dog, the kind that would have been pulled on a string. You sit back. Your hands are shaking now. Who buried a child in your cellar? You were supposed to be alone here. The next morning, you burn lavender. You speak no prayers. You simply let the smoke climb the stairs, wrapping the house like a quiet apology. You leave the toy where it was. You can't bring yourself to move it. Instead, you carry the ledger back upstairs and start reading again. But this time you're not searching for disease patterns. This time you're looking for something else, something missing, and you find it. Buried halfway through the final quarantine list between two faded entries, one infant unnamed arrived with mother, not logged after day 3. No burial date. No transfer to the mainland. No follow-up notation. Just vanished. You recognize the mother's name. She was one of the first to die here. You remember her. The cracked lips. The lullaby she hummed even after her lungs gave out. She used to sleep on the floor, curled around her child like a closing hand. You never saw the child again. You assumed. Well, you assumed many things. The mind folds certain memories away when they don't fit. The wind comes again that night. It doesn't howl, it doesn't break things, it only touches, like a forgotten sleeve brushing your face. The candle flame dances with it, then flattens, you blink once, and the cellar door is open. Just slightly, but open. No, you sealed that. You remember sealing it. You remember melting wax and pressing linen until your fingers blistered. You remember the exact curve of the doorframe, warped by salt and time. You stand. The wind is no longer from the sea. It is coming up from below. When you reach the bottom step, the cloth bundle is gone. Only the toy remains, sitting upright now, its little wooden head turned, not toward the corner, but toward the stairs. You do not scream. You do not run. You sit, and you stay until the candle dies. The next day, you write a new entry in the ledger. It has no date, just words. Some ghosts are not angry. Some just want to be remembered. By the week's end, the storms return in earnest. Rain comes in sheets. Waves slap the shore like angry hands. A ship tries to dock but turns back. You watch from the window wrapped in 4 blankets. The house groans. There is a hole in the roof you cannot patch. Drips echo in the room above the cellar. You do not go to check. You don't hear the footsteps. You only feel them. A faint thud beneath the stone, like the floor remembering weight. Like someone walking slowly, deliberately, with no need to arrive. There's no breeze in the sealed corridor, yet the candle flickers. And you realize it isn't from the air, it's from breath, not yours. You turn toward the stairwell, but the passage is empty. The light from your taper bleeds softly across damp stone. All the quarantine doors hang open now, not because someone opened them, but because time did. Warped wood, rusted hinges, but this one door, is shut. You never noticed it before. You walked past it 100 times. You thought it was just another storeroom. But now it feels like a throat holding its breath. The brass doorknob is cold, too cold for summer. Its center is etched a circle with a line through it. The mark of the plague ward. A door that was meant to stay closed forever. You press it open anyway. Inside, the air is wrong. Still, but not in a peaceful way. It's like walking into an argument that ended hours ago, and the silence is still bitter. The walls are lined with cabinets, jars filled with dark liquids. Feathers, bones, and small sacks of crushed herbs. A shelf filled with masks, but only one is missing, that mask. The one he wore, you look down, his boots are still here, set neatly beside the wall. Under the windowsill, a long coat lies folded, the beak, faced hood resting gently atop it. He removed them himself, it seems, as if he had no intention of ever needing them again, and on the table you pause. There is a sheet of parchment, stained, folded once. You pick it up, unfold it, and read, "I am not leaving." Not while they still knock. The living ones stopped long ago. But the dead, they knock at night. I promised them I'd answer. The note ends there. No signature, no date. You fold it back and place it down, carefully, like it might wake something. The myth said plague doctors were indifferent, cold. paid well to keep distance, never touch the dying. Some claimed they were charlatans no more than desperate men in black coats, stuffed with rosemary and fear. But that was only part of the truth. The rest stayed behind, on islands like this, in rooms like this. In the echo of shoes that kept walking long after they were empty, you kneel beside the coat and touch the fabric. It's heavier than it should be, stiff with old sweat, thick with age, faintly sweet with lavender and decay. A detail you never heard in books. Plague doctors often carried flowers inside their masks, not just to ward off bad air, but to remind themselves they were still alive, and that scent lavender, rosemary, crushed time wasn't medicine. It was memory, it was their last comfort. You rise, your candle burning lower now, the wax trembles, the room exhales. You step back toward the door, but something stops you, a sound, not a knock, a scrape. Faint, barely audible, like wood on stone, like someone dragging something. You turn again and realize it's coming from the cabinet in the corner. You don't open it. You don't need to, not tonight. Instead, you whisper a soft apology. Close the door gently, and keep walking, out of the ward, down the hallway, back through the hospital's silent bones. You pass by the birthing room. The cot is empty now. You pass the infirmary. The smell of lemon water and mold lingers. You pass the chapel, its candles still unlit. Even in death, some places keep their secrets. Outside, the sky is a dull bruise. Early evening. Venice is out there somewhere, but you're not sure you ever want to go back. You sit on the old bench beneath the olive tree, the same one you sat on weeks ago, though it feels like years. The bark creaks above you. The tree, like everything else on this island, is tired of pretending. You reach into your satchel and pull out the ledger, the one he kept. Thin black handwriting covers every page, patient names, symptoms. Final words, until the last page. There's only one line. I couldn't save them. You trace the words with your finger. They aren't self, pity, they're grief, bound in ink. In school, they taught you that plague doctors were symbols of fear. But they left something out. They never told you that some stayed behind, not because they were paid, but because they couldn't bear to leave, because ghosts deserve witnesses too. A breeze stirs, the candle in your hand finally gutters. Goes out,